I'm Susan Jebb. I'm co-director of the LEAP project, that's Livestock, Environment and People. What we're trying to do is to understand the health, environment, economic and social consequences of meat production and consumption. We want to find solutions which will help us to tackle some of the really big societal challenges of our time, diet-related disease and the climate challenge. As part of LEAP, my own research team, Health Behaviours, focus in particular on what it is which influences what we eat. We want to develop solutions so that we can motivate and support people towards more sustainable eating habits, in particular eating less meat, because that probably is the key thing we need to address if we're concerned about more sustainable diets.
My name is Madison Lewick. I am a research assistant on the food purchasing team within Health Behaviours at Oxford. A recent project that we've looked at is applying eco-labels, environmental impact labels, in worksite cafeterias. So what these labels do is they look at factors such as greenhouse gas emissions, water use, and biodiversity loss. And through that, it puts onto meals a label from A to E. In previous studies in online supermarkets, we found that these were effective. So it was pretty exciting. We tested quite a few different labels, and all of them except for one, the one that only indicated what was the best product, all of the others had some impact that the participants in the study purchased items that had a lower environmental impact. So we were pretty excited about this and decided to consider it in real-world settings in a worksite cafeteria. Unfortunately, we found that obviously real-world settings are very messy. That creates some issues with implementing them, and currently there's no evidence that these have had an effect in these worksite cafeterias.
What seems to happen is that people are already settled into a very established habit, and they go in and they're familiar with the environment and they make their usual choice. Labelling doesn't seem to be enough to break through those established habits. But nonetheless, there's been an important side effect, which is that the canteen has become much more interested in how they can produce foods which have a lower environmental impact. And that's a good example of how we can begin to get consumer demand working alongside the supply chain, what industry provide, and really trying to work towards this sweet spot of making it easier for people to make the healthier choice.
So I look at the impact of social norms. So those are the unwritten rules of society about how we should behave and how others expect us to behave. And I put that in the context of meat consumption. So what are the norms for eating meat? Do we eat a lot of it? Do we eat very little of it? What do our family and friends think? What do our colleagues think, roommates think? So all these meaningful others, so the people in our social circle, and how their opinions and behaviors around meat influence those of ours. So we look at current trends. So we know in the UK that more and more people are following vegetarian and vegan diets. More and more people are trying to eliminate meat from their diet. So we take that information and we try to pass it on to the people. So we're saying, yes, the norm is to eat meat, but guess what? This norm is changing, albeit slowly. So by communicating that fact, we're trying to see if we can increase the speed of that change. And if people are aware that more people are changing, would they be motivated to change as well?
So I think we've created a fantastic community of researchers coming at this problem from all different kinds of disciplinary backgrounds. And that's created a real energy, and I think it has unleashed new ideas. We've got to now engage way beyond just researchers so that we draw in industry, we draw in policymakers, we talk much more to the public at large about some of these issues, because I think it's only when we do all that and we kind of expand this community that we'll get that virtuous circle, which means that the public are looking to policymakers to making change, that researchers are able to offer solutions which are then taken up and the public find those interventions acceptable. You know, there is a real opportunity ahead. I think we've made great progress, but we've still got quite a bit more to do.
It's a good time to be in the field because actually there's a kind of trend already. So there's more vegetarians, more kind of vegans, more meat reducers. And that means that we've got this changing kind of social norm. And as that changes, we'll probably also see a change in public support, so kind of increasing support for these kinds of interventions. So our challenge is to try and accelerate that underlying pace of change.
Yes, I think it's a really exciting time to be in this field because now there's a growing evidence that reduced meat consumption is not only better for the planet, but is also better for our own personal health. So we have two arms here that reducing meat consumption can positively impact. And with increasing awareness and people being more willing to change, I think it's really interesting to try and design behavioral interventions to help people implement this change and sustain it over time.
So when we're talking about the kind of interventions that we've been investigating, such as perhaps changing in price or kind of putting labels on different products, at the end of the day, people have quite different opinions about those different interventions. Some of those they might think, I would really support that being put in place by the government. Others they might think, oh no, got a bit of a backlash against that. I don't think I would go for that myself. And that might be what we think about as being acceptability. To what extent would the public support or perhaps oppose some of these different interventions that we might investigate and see whether or not they're actually effective at changing behaviour. And one of the major challenges we actually have as kind of researchers who are really trying to promote the idea of reducing meat consumption is that the most effective interventions may be the least acceptable. So for example, are ones like meat taxes or kind of trying to change the availability and increase the proportion of meat-free items available. Those actually show the kind of promising evidence for effectiveness, but have been less acceptable in all the kind of survey work. Whereas the ones like the labelling, the idea of a nice big media campaign, those are really acceptable to people. However, the evidence for those is that they're probably quite ineffective and wouldn't be enough on their own. So we don't want to just rest our laurels and try and go for the most acceptable ones. That won't be enough. We need to try and find a way to increase the public support for those interventions that are actually going to be more effective.